What is up, guys? Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video. In this video, I'm going to be building the ultimate $2,000 gaming PC build for 2022. With an all-white aesthetic, one of the latest 12th gen Core i7 CPUs, and an RTX 3070 Ti, this is a build that means business. Perfect for gaming at 1440p high frame rates in the latest titles. I'll be running you through all the components I chose for this build, the whole build process from start to finish, before looking at the performance later on in this video. Without any further ado, let's dive into it. As always, we're going to kick things off by looking at the motherboard and the CPU first. And today, why don't we focus on that processor first and foremost. Intel's latest and greatest 12th gen Core i7, the i7-12700K. With Intel's new performance and efficiency cores, bags of clock speed, and loads of multi-threaded performance, it's primed for the latest AAA titles. It destroys any of AMD's offerings right now, and aligns more with a Ryzen 9 than it does a Ryzen 7. The new Intel chips also seem to be falling in price by the day, which is great for the CPU market overall. Picking a motherboard for these new chips, though, can be a tricky business. With a range of different chipsets available, different motherboards provide different features at different price points. And the Z690 chipset is the king of all. But unfortunately, the rationale isn't quite that simple. Some boards in the current gen support the latest DDR5 memory, and some the older but distinctively cheaper DDR4. And for this build, I've gone the DDR4 route. Currently, DDR5 is very expensive, and as of yet, doesn't really give much of a performance boost. So I'm going to stick with DDR4 today, having picked up this nice 32GB kit of Corsair's Vengeance RGB Pro. Two 16GB DIMMs for dual channel performance, and 2 RAM DIMMs left for spare. Go ahead and install your processor into the socket nice and easily. Be delicate, because the new sockets are a little bit more fussy with how you install your processor, and then add in your DRAM straight afterwards, using the grey slots on our board today. And once this is complete, we can go ahead and pop in our SSD choice today, the Samsung 980 Pro. This is an awesome Gen 4 drive with a heatsink, though a non-heatsink version is also available, and a 1TB capacity. We could pop this in the top slot of the board, but I think the heatsink looks quite nice that's pre-installed. So instead, we're going to pop it into the second M.2 slot just down here. To do that, we're going to go ahead and unscrew the screw on the standoff with a teeny tiny screwdriver. We're going to take the SSD and then slide this into place. Once it's in, we can fasten it down with a screw, and that's basically it on the storage front. Power and data are all going to be connected through this one PCIe Gen 4 port. And once your storage is in, we can move on to the cooler. Now, the i7 is an efficient chip, but it does run a bit warm, making a 360mm rad like this one a great choice. It also works aesthetically very well for the build, matching our all-white case, which is actually not all it seems. So wait for the case section and I will explain all. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to prep the cooler mounting hardware now and finish the job later on. With our cooler, we've got this little box which supports the latest Intel 12th gen processors and includes some screws, a backplate, and, well, some more screws. What we want to do is we want to take the backplate, flip the motherboard over to the rear side, and then slide the backplate onto those holes at the back. You will see that these screws are actually adjustable, making them fit basically any of your Intel sized mounting. You can just adjust them into place and then drop these male-to-male posts through those screw holes on the backplate we just popped into place. One on each corner around the CPU. And we'll be dealing with the rest of the cooler installation in just a moment. Before that, we need to look at the case. Now, I referenced a moment ago that this is not all it seems. On the face of it, this is a Corsair 4000D Airflow. And on the face of it, this is a Corsair iCUE 4000X. That's right, this is kind of two cases in one. It's got the airflow features of the Airflow version, but with 4 included RGB fans you'd find on the iCUE version. As if that wasn't enough, they've got rid of all the grey accents to make it completely white, looks sick, and upgraded the included RGB case fans to QL editions. Very expensive RGB fans if bought alone. This is available, I believe, exclusively through Corsair's web store, but I'll link any other retail options I can below, and as always, latest pricing and availability can be found on our website too. This is the perfect case for an all-white... Let's try that one again. This is the perfect case for an all-white colour scheme, and it looks, in my opinion, awesome. No grey in sight and just a few black accents here and there. What we're going to do is we're going to strip down the case by taking off as many panels as we possibly can, including this tempered glass side panel. Pop this. And then this rear panel as well. Probably not the recommended way to take off case side panels, but it works. Then we can lay the case down flat to install the motherboard into place, and we'll wrap the cooler up straight afterwards. Now, when it comes to installing a motherboard in any case, there's one really important thing you need to check, and that's that your motherboard's holes, aka these 6 standoffs just here, match up with corresponding standoffs in the case. If we take a quick look, there's 2 at the top, they're in the right places, 2 along the middle, and then a further 2 down the bottom. This motherboard is slightly narrower, meaning we won't need to use these extra standoffs, but they aren't in the way, they aren't underneath the motherboard, meaning we can leave them where they are. If, say, you had an extra standoff installed here or here, where your motherboard didn't have a hole, this could short out and cause huge problems. Pop in the rear I/O shield to the back of the case, and then slide the motherboard into place, securing down through each of those 6 screw holes. Your motherboard then isn't going to go anywhere and is starting to shape up really nicely as far as our overall build aesthetic goes. And then once this is in, I'm going to rotate the case round a little something like this, which I'm hoping will enable you to see the radiator installation from this top angle, this one, and from our side angle at the front as well, because what we need to do is unscrew all of the fans, then replace the screws in the fans with long screws that grip right through to the radiator. The tubes are going to sit at the top, and we're going to mount the water block afterwards. But for now, focus on the fans and the rad. We're going to use the included fans that came with the cooler at the top of the case to provide more airflow, and stick with the fancy QLs up front to give us the best aesthetic possible. And once the radiator's in, we can go ahead and pop on the water block. Add in a dab of thermal paste, pop the block on, and fasten it down with these included thumb screws. You can tighten these up with a Phillips head screwdriver, which I definitely recommend, as good firm contact between the cooler and processor is going to equal lower temperatures in the long run. Tighten them up nice and tight, and that's pretty much it for the CPU cooler. What we're then able to do is move on to the graphics card, or GPU. Now for this build, I've picked up the MSI Suprim X 3070Ti, my favourite 3070 Ti that exists. And for good reason. Would you just look at that GPU? Wow. With a huge 3-fan, 2.5 slot cooling design, it is awesome. And it's going to look totally dominant in the build. It comes with great boost clock speeds, loads and loads of RGB, and an aesthetic which, while it isn't completely white, it's also not black. So it should work better with the build today, tie in with the motherboard, and all in all look quite nice. That's why, if you're wondering, I've mixed this ASUS motherboard with this MSI graphics card, because I think the colour combo with the silver will look pretty tasty. 1440p gaming, high frame rates, the latest titles, this GPU does it all, ladies and gentlemen, and looks sick in the process. It's also much more purchasable for a decent price than at any other point in the last year or so that it's been out, and I think it's a really great option. I'll link this and all the other components at the affiliate links in the description below. Let's bring our case over, hover and check that the GPU is actually going to fit, because it is going to be a tight squeeze. That looks just about, only very slightly okay. Let's see if we can get a close-up of the gap. Oh my goodness, that is one small gap. But it works, and that's all that matters. Go ahead and remove the second and third PCIe slots, click the GPU into place, and fasten it down. And we can round things off by giving everything power with the next component in the build, the power supply. Which in this build is Corsair's RM850. Now, picking a good, fairly high-end power supply for a build like this is important, because you're going to need a lot of wattage between the i7 and 3070 Ti. Now, you might be concerned by the glaring black cables, but don't be. We're going to add in some custom power supply extensions too. This video isn't going to be a full cables and wiring guide, but you can read one of those over on our website in the card section now. While we're doing this, I'm also going to add our fans into the top of the case as well for a little bit extra airflow before jumping in and checking out the gaming performance in a few moments' time.
Hunting enemies, all right, iCUE.
Awesome stuff. Now that we've seen just how good this system looks when it's all powered up, it's time to make sure the performance numbers are equally impressive. And I'm glad to report we got some amazing results. On your screen now is a summary, a snapshot view of all the numbers we were able to pull in, all the frame rates for all the games and all the temperatures and all that amazing data that we can use to evaluate just how good a system is. Don't worry though, we are going to dive in title by title, looking at more detail as to how we got to the frame rates that we actually did. Starting off with GTA 5. Here at 4K high settings, we pulled in an impressive 143 frames per second, and we tested out here using the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode. This enabled us to get the most repeatable results. It also means you can copy our settings and run the benchmark mode for yourself and see how your system compares to this awesome 3070 Ti build. Moving on to Battlefield 2042 next, here we tested out at 1440p high with DLSS enabled and set to performance mode. We managed to pull in 121 frames per second on average, with 108 and 92 for the 90 and 99th percentiles. Pretty impressive. It was a similarly positive story in COD Vanguard, where once again we tested at 1440p high settings with DLSS enabled. DLSS of course being Nvidia's fancy AI-backed resolution scaler that you can learn more about in the recent article over on GeekaWhat.com. With 180 frames per second on average, DLSS and 1440p was a breeze for the 70 Ti, and consistent 90 and 99th percentile results showed that frame rates didn't deviate all that much. Next up on the list is Forza Horizon 5, a game where we pushed the limits that little bit more and tested out at 4K ultra settings instead. Here we managed to achieve more than 80 frames per second on average, with 76 and 72 for the 90 and 99th percentiles, once again testing in the game's inbuilt benchmark mode. Moving on to Halo Infinite, here at 1440p high settings we managed to achieve over 100 FPS, great to see such great results in the latest Halo title, and a visual fidelity that made the game look awesome. Apex Legends is next up on the list. Here we tested at 4K high settings once again and pulled in 111 frames per second this time around. 102 and 86 gave us solid 90 and 99th percentiles, while the game looked great at 4K. One more frame rate, head down to 1440 or 1080p. In Valorant next up, we tested at 4K high settings, and here we had no problem getting the highest frame rates. 392 frames per second to be precise, with more than 350 and just shy of 300 for the 90 and 99th percentile results, meaning 99% of the time, the frame rate was above 299 FPS. It's not just an average that looks good, the game gave us consistent results too, which is really important. We also tested out Fortnite at 1080p, and this time tried out competitive settings, tuning everything down to low, setting the render distance to far, and going ham. We pulled in 260 frames per second on average, with 242 and 218 for the 90 and 99th percentiles. Finally, to wrap things up, we tested out COD's Warzone at 1440p high settings this time. 125 frames per second on average was an awesome result, with 109 and 94 for the 90 and 99th percentiles. As ever, our frame rate was tested with both Nvidia FrameView and MSI Afterburner. And with that, that just about wraps it up for this one. Make sure to get subscribed if you'd like to see more from us. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.